Have you ever wondered why a woman chooses to live alone? What is the truth behind women who choose a life without a man? Edit from here. They don't have a date, nor do they want to get to know someone. The answer is not as simple as the choice to be alone, but deeper. The uncomfortable truths you are about to hear about women may shock you. Before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and send this video to a woman now. Also, be sure to leave your own thoughts in the comments. Now we go deeper. When women are alone, it is often thought of as a loss, a lack. But in reality, loneliness allows them to find their deepest longings and inner strengths. To others, a woman's choice to live alone may seem like a void or an absence. But in reality, she creates a space for herself. This space is a space away from the noise of the outside world, away from people's expectations and social norms, where she can embark on her own inner journey. Her solitude is a search for self-knowledge, inner peace, and true freedom. Solitude is a woman's process of self-discovery. And one of the most common things encountered in this process is a deep resistance to the stereotypes that society imposes on women. Women who live alone are often labeled as independent, cold, or restless. But in reality, these women are just people trying to rebuild themselves, trying to break out of the mold, trying to stay true to who they are. Therefore, loneliness is not their worst enemy, but rather a friend. That loneliness allows deep thoughts not shared with anyone, emotions not understood, suppressed desires and abandoned hopes to surface. And each woman's journey is different. Some seek solitude, others seek to rebuild their identity. This process may seem very simple from the outside, but in reality it is a very deep and complex journey. Inside every woman there is a desire to make peace with the world, to question the meaning of life, and ultimately to find inner peace. But this is only possible when isolated from the outside world. In their solitude, women discover a power of their own. This power is independent of external validation. These women often refuse to enter into relationships or look for a partner because they experience an inner sense of completeness. This is actually a rejection of the need for external validation. Most women have come a long way to get to this point. Past relationships, emotional attachments, and societal pressures are all part of the process. At some point, however, these women decide to no longer live according to the expectations of others. They discover the power of their independence and solitude. A woman who lives alone is not looking for love and attention. She has learned to love herself and accept the power within herself. Women's decision to be alone is born out of an inner depth, rather than an external emptiness. Most men define themselves by the idea that they need a woman. But this is not the case for single women. They do not need a relationship to give them an identity or for a man to value them. Their own identity is independent of others, because they can exist without depending on others. As Carl Jung said, everything we reject in ourselves becomes part of our shadow. These women are a reflection of our social shadow. They are women who do not fit the mold, who do not conform to societal norms, but who retain their freedom. These women live a life that most people dream of, but few dare to dare. They have left aside love, relationships, and the rules imposed by society and embarked on their own journey. On this journey, they have accepted neither emotional dependence nor external validation. Loneliness is like a reward for them, a kind of space of freedom. They see being alone not as a punishment, but as a choice, because solitude gives them the opportunity to discover who they really are. However, the power of single women is often perceived as a threat by those around them. This is because these women go beyond the roles assigned to them by social norms, and they frighten others with their independence. Many people cannot accept a woman standing on her own. These women can be irritating because they do not dictate how others should treat them. Society expects you to be constantly in relationships, to form emotional attachments, and to be dependent on others. But these women choose their independence and freedom. They do not see their loneliness as a punishment. On the contrary, it is a place where they find inner peace. They use solitude as a space where they value themselves. This strength of theirs is often misunderstood by those around them, because society often labels a woman being alone as something negative. But the truth is that a woman who is alone is not lost. She is just working on a different level. A level where she doesn't beg for things, where she chooses things. On a level where she doesn't seek approval, where her presence is enough. These women do not live according to the expectations of others. They live only according to their own truth and inner voice. And this creates a great discomfort in their environment. Because society doesn't understand when a woman is alone. Their loneliness is not a weakness to be shown to others, but on the contrary, a show of strength. These women somehow use their loneliness as a challenge to others. They celebrate not only their loneliness, but also their independence. This makes them even more powerful and even more impressive. No longer promises or empty words, but a real presence makes an impact. Perhaps that's why it seems unattainable to many, because it doesn't want to be rescued, it just wants to be accepted for who it is. And this requires much more than simple words or fleeting promises. It requires a readiness to go to depths few dare to go. Here, most people step back, not because it is difficult, but because she exists fully and wholly. When a woman becomes whole, it evokes two extreme reactions: admiration and fear. Admiration comes from those who are seeking wholeness like her, and fear comes from those who are still trying to exist dependent on others. She does not want to complete anyone. She wants to share her life with someone who has found her wholeness. That's why she continues to be alone. Not as a result of fate, but out of loyalty to herself. She is not hiding. She is protecting herself. She knows the difference between isolation and protection. However, the world does not easily accept such women. In a world where being a couple is still equated with happiness, women who only stay strong are seen as failures. Carl Jung once said, "Where tradition prevails, there is little room for originality." This woman does not follow tradition, she lives by her own truth. Many times she is told, "You are too picky, you should be more open, nobody is perfect." And she responds patiently and calmly, because he knows very well that his selectivity is actually the minimum he deserves. He is not looking for perfection. He is looking for someone who is mature, who has true love, and who understands himself. And let's be honest, such people are really not to be found on every corner. When this woman prefers to be alone, she is not lost. Her loneliness is not a lack, but an inner strength. She chooses to belong only to herself without belonging to others. In her journey of self-knowledge, she follows her own path, not according to the expectations of others. Loneliness is not an emptiness, on the contrary, it offers him the space to discover peace and strength within himself. She lives her own life with her own truths, without the need to prove anything to others. Those around her often misunderstand her decision to be alone. She never feels lacking when she chooses to be alone. On the contrary, it is her journey of self-discovery. Solitude opens the door to freedom and helps her to understand who she is and what she wants. People often describe her as cold or distant, but in fact, she is a woman who has found her inner strength, focused only on her inner world. A woman is truly powerful when she is alone because she can shape her own life without being dependent on others. She does not see loneliness as a deficiency, on the contrary, it is a step on her path to becoming complete and whole. On the outside, loneliness may seem like a void, but in fact he has reached his inner strength. He focuses only on the peace and balance within himself, not on the expectations of others. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is that her decision to be alone is in no way a failure, but rather a quest to discover freedom and strength within herself. While many might see her loneliness as a deficiency, in fact, she has found her own wholeness and has begun to live without the need for others. A woman full of inner strength does not allow anything outside to make her feel incomplete. She is a woman who has broken her dependence on others and has found herself. She lives in peace with loneliness because it offers her the opportunity to discover herself, to face her inner strength. When she finds her own identity, the need to depend on others or to belong to them disappears. He is only the subject of his own life. With her inner strength, loneliness ceases to be a deficiency and becomes a symbol of freedom. This woman may look lonely and silent from the outside, but in fact she is a woman who has gone deep into her own journey with her inner strength. A truly strong woman does not get lost when she is alone. On the contrary, she gets lost in the depths of herself and discovers her true self. She is complete even when alone, because she has found her inner strength and has begun to live her life without the need for others. The woman who once begged for love is replaced by a woman who can stand strong on her own. Something inside her breaks, but it is that break that liberates her. Because sometimes it is only by breaking down, by an inner breakdown, that one is truly liberated. That woman can't go back to the way she was. That woman who once tried to prove her worth to others with her tears, with her longings, knows that nothing can determine her worth anymore. That break has completely reborn her. A woman's inner strength comes from the difficulties she experiences. Every loss, every pain makes her stronger, wiser. But something changes in the process. She no longer just needs a relationship, a man, someone else's approval. She gets to know herself again and, most importantly, accepts herself as she is. This makes her freer than ever. Here is a woman who no longer needs to prove anything to others. And this woman's loneliness is not a deficiency but a strength. Living alone is not only a choice but also a show of strength. She is a woman who can manage her own life without needing anyone. She does not beg for love. She is strong and independent enough to attract love into her life. Although she may look lonely from the outside, she is actually a woman who has found inner peace and made peace with herself. A woman's rediscovery of herself makes her dangerous, because that woman has the determination to make her own way without needing anyone. She no longer has to prove to others that she is important. The center of her life is only herself. Her presence every moment she stands without waiting for the approval of others is a revolution. Because she no longer needs the approval or appreciation of others, she is self-sufficient. In the past, a woman's decision to be alone was often seen by society as a deficiency. But this woman accepts her solitude as a choice. She does not want to belong to others. She has found her own identity. She has made peace with her own self. Loneliness no longer offers her a void, but a space of freedom. In this process of discovering herself in the deepest way, she has completely broken her attachment to others. And this woman cannot go back to her old self, because that break, which she once experienced in pain, has brought her freedom. She lives peacefully in her own world, no longer needing love or others. Her clarity and freedom changes everything around her, because she has now found her true self and has learned to live with that self. The way a woman finds her own way is sometimes not understood by those around her. But this woman does not care what others think. She is strong in herself. She no longer has to please anyone or prove herself to anyone. She follows her own path, and this path brings her both peace and freedom. A woman living alone is an act that questions the old patterns of society. She is one of the rare people who can sustain her own existence without belonging to others. Solitude offers her a space of freedom, not emptiness. She has the power to shape her own life without needing anyone. And most importantly, she no longer forces anyone to love her, because she has learned to love herself. In conclusion, a woman who lives alone is never incomplete. She is a complete and whole person. She is a woman who has discovered her inner strength, who can stand strong without depending on others. Her solitude is not a choice, but a space of freedom. She no longer succumbs to any pressure from outside. She is a woman who has found inner peace and shapes her own life with her own truth. She knows that she deserves love, but she does not beg for it. She doesn't beg anyone to make room for her, because she has learned that one should invite, not beg, someone to come into one's life. And if this invitation does not really come, she rejects it. He doesn't react with anger or bitterness. He simply steps back from others so as not to allow the same wound to be opened again. What few people can understand is this. This woman still wants love, still wants to be held, chosen, but she wants it without losing herself. Because for too long she has tried to fit into molds that were too narrow for her soul. Now she is looking for places where she can present herself as a whole. And this requires a maturity far beyond romanticism. It requires awareness. It requires facing one's own shadow and choosing love in spite of it. It doesn't look for fairy tales. It looks for a spiritual connection, a connection where both parties can grow without fading each other's colors, silencing each other's pain, or diminishing each other's dreams. If this is too much for some, so be it, because he would rather wait than survive on emotional crumbs. This may sound like arrogance to many, but it is self-love in its purest form. We are witnessing a new archetype of woman, a woman who has moved away from the superficial, who has dived into the depths. This is a woman who is no longer satisfied with being desired, who chooses to be respected, who prefers to be alone. She is lonely not only because she has abandoned love, but because she realizes that true love does not require denying herself. When a woman realizes this, her whole world changes. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her presence is already heard. Wherever she goes, the energy changes. The room is somehow but surely realigned. It's not mysticism, it's energy. It's the weight of someone who has faced the most brutal inner battles and has chosen to come back in peace. Carl Jung would say that she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by uniting them. This woman does not reject love. She has simply learned to submit to unstable relationships. One does not have to be extinguished for the other to shine. She wants to love, but she wants to love without changing her essence. She wants a love in which she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. Because he understands that those who love only the beautiful parts have not yet learned true love. Those who want constant sweetness have not yet understood the bitter flavors necessary for growth. He is too whole to settle for halves, too free to be imprisoned under indifferent gazes, too sensitive to accept superficial attachments. At the same time, it is strong to keep choosing this path even if it hurts, even if it is lonely, even if it is misunderstood. This is the journey of an awakened soul, the journey of letting go of momentary affirmations and accepting a deeper truth. Deep down, the world fears such women because they are women who do not need others, who do not bend, who do not want to be molded. They question unseen structures, question old patterns, and break the silent emotional contracts that once said a woman is only worth anything when she is with someone. And when this woman breaks these contracts, when she rewrites her own story, she inspires others. And this is dangerously revolutionary for the system. So she continues, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with her chest held high, but always with her feet firmly on the ground. Because now he knows that he is not alone. He is with himself. And after everything she has been through, she knows what true loneliness is. That woman smiles peacefully even when no one is with her, because she has discovered that being alone is not a punishment, but an oath of loyalty to her own soul. The soul of an awakened woman does not surrender, does not fade, does not beg. It simply exists, and that is enough. The world will keep telling her that something is missing, distracting her, offering her false princes made for the window. But he has already seen behind the curtain. She now knows that it's not about finding someone, it's about never losing herself again. And when this realization dawns, everything changes. Desire becomes selectivity, lack becomes a choice. Waiting becomes a journey, and what once hurt now teaches. What once bound now liberates. You realize that you feel something deep inside you. Maybe it's a memory, an old wound, or an irrational nostalgia. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you are now. In any case, something inside you wants to be seen more clearly, something inside you that no longer fits into the old mold. And if you allow it, it can completely transform your relationship to love, to others, and most importantly, to yourself. That woman who lives alone is not just someone who doesn't fit the mold. She is a living symbol of emotional freedom. It is a reminder that it is possible to rebuild without haste, without fear, and without the need to prove anything to anyone. He leaves no one behind, but at the same time, he follows no one. It makes its own path. It is unique, indispensable. And on that journey, she lights small fires for other women who wake up. If something about this story touched you, maybe deep down you are ready for a new kind of love too. A love where you make peace with yourself. A love that is nourished on silence, presence, and reality. A love that cannot be bargained, begged, or masked. And if that love has not yet arrived, perhaps you first had to become a woman who would accept nothing less than what you deserve for yourself. This woman refuses to be dependent on any man or anybody else in her life. She needs no one to live her life. She draws all her inner strength and value from herself. Being with others does not prevent her from finding herself. On the contrary, she doesn't need anyone to complete her, so the person next to her can be truly herself. He recognizes that only the right person is worth sharing the right moment with. That right person should be someone who can only share with her a complete and mature love. She wants to give herself to the other without disturbing the peace and balance within herself, and to have a relationship without losing herself in the other. He waits for the right moment while preserving his loneliness. But while waiting, he never compromises his own values. And if this message has found you at the right time, or awakened the forgotten woman inside you, then I invite you to not leave it alone. Share this video with other women who need to remember their strength. Like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. But do it by choice, not just by instinct, because when something touches our soul, we must at least allow it to resonate within us. See you in the next video.